Glad to be here. Amazing to see you guys here too. This is the second time I've attended one of these events, and got to say, love it, great energy, lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds doing really cool things. So thank you for coming through to listen to my humble approach and my humble opinion, and what has tended to work most of the time. So utilising culture, cultural architecture, and deepening your brand's connection. I think to kick things off, it's important to note that a lot of the work that I do is in the demystifying of words like culture, right? And I think that unless you study this stuff intently, it can be quite a big thing to tackle and to wrestle with, right? And when you are dealing in the business of connecting to people, to audiences, to groups, to customer bases, essentially as a business and as a team and as a professional, you have challenges, right? And the more unambiguous you can make that challenge, the better chance you have of actually tackling it. So a lot of the work I do is to bring things down to the most simplest terms, to a human level where we can kind of understand them and have some chance of getting over them. Also, it's important to note that I'm more interested in evolution in this context than revolution. I'm not in the business of throwing out everything that's worked up until this point to kind of throw the baby out with the bathwater, as it were. This is about implementing philosophies and ideals into the work that works already to improve and optimize it. That's also important to note. What else? Also, the examples that you might see in here, they're fluid. They are super relevant to me based on my perspective in the world, but I'm all about celebrating difference. If they're not super relevant to you, you're not aware of them, it's cool. We're focusing on the concept. The concept is fluid and transferable, okay? Just a little bit of a setup for you guys. Okay, so this is me. This is the coolest picture of myself that I could find. Respect it, thank you. So, I'm from Southeast London. Any Londoners in the building? Anyone from South specifically? Right, so, it's funny, anywhere you go in the world, South London just happens to be there, it's weird. What's important to note about London is, it's funny, I had a conversation with a journalist last week who's writing a story about the UK bike life scene, right? And wanted specifically to focus on black bike culture. And what I was trying to get her to understand is that London is a unique place insofar as everyone's on top of each other. It is like the definition of a mixing pot. So you specifying what black bike culture is, as though I don't ride with Turkish people and Bengali people and people from everywhere, and we kind of all read from the same hymn book culturally when it comes to bikes. So something that we'll pick back up on later. Anyway, studied media production, did a fair bit of production, creative and strategy, and been both agency and brand side, consulting in cultural marketing, la-di-da-di-da, a whole bunch of brands that I've worked with. Cool. Just so I'm not making stuff up, this is why I had to have this slide, cool? Wicked, right. So this image is important. When we talk about deepening brands connection, this image for me is like it, okay? This is the original model, one big group, one big audience that we focus on and we service, and we need to prioritize them because that's the bread and butter. And what I'm saying is that might have been the traditional perspective in how we categorize success. Traditional marketing, ad strategy, that will tell you that we need to be heavily restrictive and looking like silos of demographics, et cetera, et cetera. What we actually want is this fibrous root system, like a really dense, thick, converging groups and communities that are just overlapping, because that's going to be a lot harder to uproot and keep it moving with, okay? And for me, this image just speaks volumes. So we're going to click on. Some of you guys might be asking this question, what the hell is cultural architecture? So what I was saying earlier about trying to simplify some of these quite out there terms is you can't really get more bricks and mortar than architecture, right? Super practical. So we'll run through it. The methods through which culture is articulated, allowing for communities to connect. Fashion, food, music, film, and many more facets of culture can be described as architectural elements. More subtly, I can't read from it, I'm going to read on the screen. More subtly, an attitude and energy or a hierarchy of principles also contribute to the construction of cultural experience. So all of the things that we use as communities to signify that we are part of the same batch, we're part of the same team, part of the same family, part of the same crew, part of the same gang, part of the same nation, part of the same army, all of the things that we do to indicate that we are part of that group can be considered as cultural architecture. And as I said, it can be as subtle as an attitude. I don't know if you've ever seen anyone from the West Indies and how they walk. There's a specific bop, there's a bit of rhythm. That's part of their cultural architecture. I say they, I'm part of them. Any other examples I can think of off the top of my head? Fashion, how many references do we have from that? The mods, the rockers, the punk movement. I think we've all been teenagers in this room. I think we've all fought virulently to identify ourselves and to be recognized as part of a group. That is us, in an individual sense, leveraging cultural architecture to indicate that this is who we are and this is what we're part of. As brands, we need to remember the teenager in us and recognize how important that is when we start to branch out, connect, and try to engage with audiences, groups. This is the basis of it. There will be questions afterwards. So, some examples of this. So, top left, has anyone heard of the streetwear brand Cortez? You can see some smug nods right now. I'm cool, I know what that is. I see you, that's dope. They have been studied a lot, actually, by marketeers in how they leverage community. A real guerrilla approach, a real root-up approach to how they engage. Super youth-led, and it's culminated in a trajectory that's led them to a collaboration with Nike, as you can see. A way little known brand, Who's That? Has anyone heard of Who's That? Again, my local and very super relevant to me reference. They are a brand, a streetwear brand, who basically are the voice of a generation, okay? In terms of, if you're 16, you've got an L plate on your bike, you've got your first scooter, these are your people. These are the people that say, we understand where you're coming from, we understand that you're not old enough to get the big bike that you want, we understand that you've probably got a curfew and your mum wants you home by tea. You get a little bit older and it starts to get a little bit more naughty, and there's this kind of sexy criminal element that they leverage as well. But ultimately, it's again tapping into a community and really, in a deep way, understanding what drives them, what's important to them, and then positioning themselves in that space. Other things that kind of cross these cultural lines, I'm not going to go through all of them. Has anyone heard of these guys at the top, the top middle ones? Okay, this is Pete and Baz, okay? And you might not know it, but these are some of the most critically acclaimed drill rappers in the UK. I'm dead serious. Like, I'm not joking, right? And again, I said I'd come back to it later. London is that kind of place where there are people living on the estates from everywhere and anywhere that grew up together, that speak the same language, that eat the same food. They're all, they go into so-and-so's house and their mum's giving them some samosas. They go into so-and-so's house and they might get, pie and mash, who knows. But they are definitely tapping into what it means to be London, because they don't look on the surface to be one thing, but that fibrous root system that I described earlier, it's about the crossing over and the converging of experiences. I'm not going to go through the rest of them. Maybe I will. So everyone knows this one at the top right. Yeah. This is Salt Bay, viral moment. This is appearing in the zeitgeist, right? Cultural explosion. Everyone's dropping salt on their elbow. It got weird pretty quickly. He leveraged that into a multi-million-pound global business. Okay, so if there is not a case to be made about paying attention to what's happening in culture, look at him. And everyone says his restaurant's rubbish. Can you imagine? It's crazy. We've got these two jokers down here, KSI and Jake Paul. They launched an energy drink. They had it from everywhere in the Super Bowl. They had, I don't know if you pay attention to what's happening on Instagram, but they had a small off license in Wakefield, kind of doing crazy content around them, a real bottom-up and top-down approach, but there was a real focus on tapping into how people are engaging in culture and engaging in content. My last example I'm going to give you, Harry Kane. What I like about this guy is, on the face of it, he could be any Michael Owen, David Beckham. He could be any one of the like super middle of the road white athletes that have been kind of propelled as like the hero of the nation. But if you hear him speak, he sounds like any of the white boys that I grew up with, any of them. And I love that. And what that's allowed him to do is to connect with people that the previous mentioned people have not been able to connect with. So again, just an indication of how important culture is and how it allows you to engage with people in a really serious way. Cool. So why is that important? What is so important about depth and connection? Why? Well, the first thing is you want to be noticed. I think you've probably seen this stat before, but in the 1950s, you'd probably be exposed to about 500 brands if you're in a city area. Now it's more like 5,000 a day. That's a lot of noise. We all understand the term cut through, right? So if you're not trying to establish a deep connection, then you're going to be just another one of the 5,000 brands to be chosen. The research shows more than 50% of us prefer to buy from brands who align with us in terms of personal values and beliefs. And finally, to be loved. Talkwalker told us that after analysing 800 of the world's most loved brands, that the key elements or indicators as to who we loved most, it was about, on top of great customer care and positive PR, which, as I said, let's not throw out the stuff that already works. It is about cultural alignment with the audiences that they speak to. So all of this is to say, to differentiate yourself through depth of connection, it's both long and tactical work. So custom service, your PR stuff, everything that's working already is still important, but roll into your planning, roll into your day dot plan of action that who are we speaking to, and culturally, where are they? So, navigating the unknown. Again, social listening and trend tracking it works, so we need to keep on top of that. Who's your target audience? Who are the adjacent audiences? And how are they responding to spikes in general? You can kind of gauge how people are responding socially, digitally, to current affairs. You can gauge where they are in terms of what they're condemning, what they're aligning themselves with, as to that's your architecture. That's where, okay, well, I need to be in the center of the room so they see me. These are the things you want to be paying attention to. Try to lay that out. Now, this is more of a representation of what I'm talking about. So on the left, you've got things that you might be listening for, behaviors from your audiences. You've got the social, political polarity, like where they're sitting, left, right, central. Sentiment tracking on any given event, how empathetic they are to certain things, how much they condemn certain things, and the visibility and representation, how much do they care about that? How much do they care about difference? And then on the right, you have what your brand is doing. How well have you articulated your cultural and principle alignments? What is your brand story, your brand mythology, and what are the brand traits that you live and breathe in terms of your outgoing comms? There will be natural crossing points with what's important to you and what's important to the people that you're talking to, and that's where you kind of need to double down on your output. Your internal culture. So a lot of the brands that I've worked with, they kind of want a quick fix. They're like, we want to tap into Gen Z. And I'm like, okay, cool. Like, what's going on in-house? Like, what's your attitudes? What's happening in the decision-making rooms right now? Who's there? Where are you from? What do you like? How old are you? Is there enough of a space for anyone in any room to make a suggestion? Is there space for curiosity? Are you promoting that as a value in your business, in your teams, and in your internal culture? Are you promoting and rewarding people for being curious enough to say, well, why are we doing it that way? Can we maybe try that way? Not everyone does that. In fact, most people don't do that. So what does curiosity look like? It looks like looking or noticing things, calling them out, wanting to do something about them, having some commitment to want to try and make things better, being willing to do something in a different way. So if someone else in the team is saying, well, maybe we don't do it that way because it's a bit poo, let's try it this way, does the rest of the team go, no, we've been doing it for years? Like, what is the attitudes in your team? What is your internal culture saying? It's going to have a huge input in what you can do outwardly. And is there, what are you doing to mitigate the cost of curiosity? Again, is there a negative response when someone does suggest a new way of doing things? These are all questions that you need to be asking yourself about yourself and about your teams. If there's any leaders in the room, what are you doing to make it comfortable and facilitate, create the space for people to speak freely and openly about what they think is working and not working? I'm getting some mini fist pumps. Let's go. Cool. So, championing difference. Don't know if you've heard this term before, but I'm a fan of it. More diverse teams drive superior results. It's not an opinion anymore. It's been proven. Don't restrict the dimensions of diversity. Okay, I think that the D&I game gets it gets a lot of shine. It kind of starts a lot of conversations, and there are some groups and some elements within that conversation that kind of rise to the top in terms of visibility. But when I talk to teams about diversity, I'm talking about diversity of perspective, I'm talking about diversity of age, of course race, and of course gender, and of course people's sexuality and how they present. But I'm talking about diversity from all angles, because the more perspectives that you have, the better you're going to do. Like, I can't tell you how many times I've come across a challenge in a campaign. We're going live in the Middle East with this campaign just after Ramadan. We need to, get X, Y, and Z delivered. This is the messaging. This is the content. I'm like, cool. I don't know nothing about the Muslim community over there. I know my Muslim mates that I grew up with, but I don't know how they do things. I don't know what's going to offend them. I don't know what their practices are. So a lot of the times, if you have the people in the room that know more than you about something, great. The next step after that is knowing when you don't know something. It's okay to be like, you know what, no one in this room knows what we're talking about. Maybe we need to get someone from outside of this room to come in and speak on it. These are elements of the internal culture that we want to talk about. And of course, the big quote that we got there, the most diverse companies are now more likely than ever to outperform less diverse peers on profitability. I love the specification of profitability, because at the end of the day, we're all in business. And sometimes conversations about diversity get clouded with business as usual. We've all got to make money. We've got to keep the lights on. This brings it back down to what I was saying earlier. Your day one plan of how you want to function as a brand and as a business needs to incorporate different voices, because it has been proven. This is a McKinsey investigative report that they've run from 2015 till now, I believe. This is the third installment, and every single time they've done it, it's doubled down, and the results have proven very clearly more diverse teams means mo better. Cool. So, internal culture, again, rooting teams in the brand story. The brand mythology, as I like to call it, is so important. Like, I really dwelled on this the other day and kind of meditated on it. You got to think that, First World War, think about what it meant to jump over the top of a trench and run into a hail of bullets. Like, think about how brave that is and how objectively insane that is, right? It was the mythology of a nation state, i.e. England, queen and country, that was believed to such an extent that that is the behavior that it drove, okay? Now, whether or not you like that, don't like that, whatever your feelings are, that definitely happened, and that was definitely the driver of that behavior. So I say that to say, if you're not taking your brand mythology seriously, and you're not articulating that story, and you're not living and breathing that story, then how can you expect anyone to be driven in terms of their behavior by it? Is your brand story accessible, both internally and externally? And when I say accessible, I don't mean just like a book that you get when you first start, and you kind of flick through the first pages and you don't touch it again. Is it something that lives and breathes within your organization? Is it in the daily behaviors of your team and your leadership team? Is it something that is in the language of your business? Is it articulated in how you treat your customers and how you deliver your products and services? It needs to be proliferated through every element of your business if you want it to drive behavior. I'm going to click on. Cool. So I've got some examples of what I think are great examples of where brands have kind of done it. I've got a static one down here from the North Face over in North America. This was in response to Trump's proposals about a southern border wall. Walls are meant for climbing. Now, they kind of took a position without kind of being super political about it. They kept it within the realms of their brand and their business and their offering. They didn't step outside of their brand mythology, but they did connect with their audience that they know has a position on this. And they said, well, if that's your position, what's our position? Well, this is our position. How are we articulating it? And that's that convergence that we spoke about earlier. I'm going to attempt to play some of these videos as examples, and I'm hoping that it works.
Calling all creators.
Those with the need
to make something new, who are obsessed with progress.
Creativity is everything in today's game.
It's about making a statement.
I think what we're all trying to do is leave a mark so the game will never be the same.
The game will never
be the same.
We're all creators, related by a mindset.
That's our job, to continue to try to enlighten while we inspire.
I've been taking an example of it, but now I have to create for myself.
It's not about borders,
gender,
or race.
I ain't trying to stay in my lane. I'm trying to strike while the iron hot.
It's all intertwined. Fashion inspires music.
Art, design, and sport together.
Come on, Hopkins. You know you listening to Pusha T before you hit the field. And Aaron Rodgers, maybe you should.
Join us.
Join us.
Pull up a chair.
Let's change sport.
Change lives.
Let's create.
Let's create.
Okay, so in a time where kids more and more are saying that they want to be YouTubers, I think this is pretty fitting. I like the fact that they leveled the playing field. They put designers, musicians, athletes, all on the same platform, and they said, A, you're all human. You know, no one's getting more shine than anyone else. You're hearing different accents, different textures, different looks, different colors, different ages, different genders, and they're all identifying under the brand kind of umbrella of a perspective and saying we're all creators. I really dug that one.
Lots of times I felt like I had to be forced into a box. Now I'm the type of person where I don't really care what type of box you put on me, what type of label you put on me, but I'm still do what I want.
You know, 8 years ago, I had negative $76 in my bank account. I think that I'm most proud that I didn't give up. Focusing on other people, it was just for the first time, and I was just living in the present tense. Oz, am I boring you? I'm sorry.
You can achieve happiness. You just have to understand where you are in this world. We live on this planet that's floating in space, and that's how I kind of live my life.
We as humans are much more capable of changing than you think.
I was very lucky. The reason that I've been successful in politics is because I always worked for people that I believed in. 15 years ago, nobody even knew who Barack Obama was. So think of all the people that we don't even know exist yet who will have such an impact.
I walked in like this. I love that there's such a variety of different people here. Living in New York, you still get to meet people from all over the world.
We have Bumble Biz, Bumble BFF. Now we got a Bumble Baby. You're pregnant.